sure that those monies are invested in the places that we want to see supporting the projects, innovations that I know all of us see our economy, our country, our lives change. So that's why we're here. We're here to build power, hold folks accountable, and ask Congressman Yarn to go big, go bold, and go bold. So I'm going to stop talking for a little bit, and I'm going to introduce Ashley Snyder, who is the Vice President of the Kentucky State AFL-CIO and the Political Director with IUE-CWA. And in another part of my life, outside of KFTC or in conjunction with KFTC, I'm leading some efforts to support cooperatives, cooperative development, cooperative businesses. And I've had the pleasure to meet Ashley in that work. She and her team have been supporting the Louisville Association for Community Economics and our efforts to build the Louisville Community Grocery, a co-op grocery that's going to be either in West Louisville or in Smoketown. And I'm so happy to have built a relationship with Ashley. And I know that we're going to continue building power here in Louisville and across the state. So with that, Ashley, come on.
Thank you, Casa. She's amazing, right? Let's give her another round of applause. She works day and night, never breathes, never sleeps. As she said, my name's Ashley Snyder. I am the political campaign lead for IUE-CWA. I'm also the vice president of the Kentucky State AFL-CIO, and I'm also the trustee of the Greater Louisville Central Labor Council. We represent, yes, thank you, yeah. We represent about 50,000 union workers across Kentucky. And so infrastructure and jobs are always super important to us, and that's why we just feel that this campaign and these bold pieces of legislation are always very important. The ones that we really want to push and that we've been supporting behind is the Green New Deal, infrastructure reform, the PRO Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and many more. Yes, voting rights should be important to everybody. Yeah, and we've definitely got to dig our heels in, right? Trillions of dollars are on the line for that reason alone. We need to be informed and engaged to make sure that these dollars and resources are targeted to benefit America's working class people, their families, and their children. The pandemic revealed who our real essential workers are, but they weren't paid that way. During the pandemic, we saw all of our faults in our system were highlighted in red, and everything's screaming Mayday, and we can't turn a blind eye on it anymore. We have witnessed the current and coming impacts of climate change. We've seen folks evicted during a pandemic, protests in the streets for racial justice, and insurrection to install a fascist state. If we don't stand up and fight today, there may not be a healthy economy tomorrow. I want my kids to work 40 hours a week and that be enough. I want them to have a right to a union and union wages and benefits. I want my kids to have access to clean water and air. We cast our ballots every November in hopes that our representatives will support us in D.C., and we have to hold them accountable and make sure that they know that we're not playing around anymore. The $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, it's a good start, but it's not in itself, it's not enough. We're probably going to need about 10 times that much. That's why I'm here today, along with my brothers and sisters, calling on our representatives in D.C. and let them know that we're serious about this. The changes that we need to happen for climate care, jobs, and social justice. The poor and working class, they pay the majority of the taxes, so it's time the majority of the taxes actually support the poor and working class. I'm excited to meet all of you all today. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to walk along all of you in protest rallies. We've got to get out there and do everything we can to make sure that we get the right funding for these kind of bills like this one today. Feel free to call me anytime. I really appreciate you all being here today, and I hope to see you a lot more in the future, in person or over Zoom. Thank you guys so much, and I'm going to hand it back to Casa.
Thank you, Ashley. Let's give her another round of applause. Ashley's right. We vote every November, and we also vote in May. Primaries are just as important as the elections in November. So let's just remember, as we are gathering and organizing our friends and families this fall, let's remind people that we've got an election coming up in May before you have one in November. Before I pass it to the next speaker, I wanted to bring your attention to the exchange table here. There's t-shirts and it's like frisbees and nice placards. There's also an abundance of food. For those who do know me and may not know me, you're going to get to know me. I am a big food advocate. I came into organizing by examining our agricultural economy here. 20 years ago, probably 30 years ago, I got into the work 20 years ago, but longer than that, our agricultural economy was beginning to shift. Our farmers and our families weren't getting what we needed from tobacco. It wasn't feeding us, literally, it was killing us. And thanks to the work of a lot of regular, hardworking Kentuckians, we passed a very significant bill. We put half of our tobacco settlement fund, so the states sued the tobacco companies, and all the states won. And all that money came to states. And Kentucky was one of the only states that set aside half of that money for agriculture diversification, so that we can use the assets that we have, these, I think, 85,000 farms or so, to feed us and not grow tobacco that's going to harm us, but to grow food. And thanks to Black Soil of Kentucky, which is led by Ashley Smith, a good friend of mine, we were able to get produce produced and grown by Black farmers in our state to give to you today. So feel free. We don't want this table empty. So if you've got neighbors that you know that need something, you can take it there for your family, feel free. And share the good news that we've got farmers making awesome food, and we're trying to figure out how to get it to the folks who need it. So thank you so much. Next up is Ebony Cochran, and as Ebony is coming, it's the work of REACT that really helped me to understand the environmental segregation that's happening in this community. I am from Richmond, Kentucky, and I came here in '97 to attend university. And for anyone who's not from Louisville and you attend the university, people tell you not to go to West Louisville. Well, I look like the people in West Louisville, so I was certainly in West Louisville when I came here as a student. And it was, I can't think of the gentleman's name. Certainly, yes, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roosevelt Roberts was one of the REACT leaders, and Reverend Coleman. And I would watch them and I would listen to them. And I would see Reverend Coleman walking around with his bullhorn and standing up to the big companies and demanding that we do something. And I'm so glad that Ebony too saw and worked with them and has continued to hold that mantle and to really push for clean air, clean water, and the redevelopment of the bad soil in West Louisville, so that not just West Louisville is moved forward, but our entire region is moved forward. So with that, I'll pass it over to Ebony.
Hello, again, my name is Ebony Cochran. I am a member of REACT, but also a resident of the Chickasaw neighborhood. REACT was initially a campaign of the Justice Resource Center, led by the late Reverend Louis Coleman, and actually also Maddie Jones. Still with us today and still out there rallying and doing as she can. So that's right. REACT is fighting for strong laws to stop toxic air pollution from chemical facilities, the protection of residents in the event of a leak, fire, or explosion in a chemical facility or rail car, and full disclosure and easy access to information concerning the impact on residents living nearby and others visiting or working in the area. Many communities around the globe, in this country, in this city, in West and Southwest Louisville, bear the burden of decades of cumulative impacts. To add insult to injury, we are now facing the impacts of climate change. As folks are working together to bring about the Green New Deal, we must also concern ourselves with what we can do right now to help fortify communities against the threat that is on its way. Yes. We tend to deal with issues of climate change on a macro level without giving any thought about how we can begin putting into place processes, materials, supplies, and systems that will help reduce impact for families and individual households. There are a number of issues that must be planned for by officials with community and known by all. Emergency preparedness, emergency response, evacuation, household evacuation preparedness, who is responsible for what, educating the community and educating decision makers, taking inventory and dealing with infrastructure issues, how to reduce health impacts, making sure hazardous industries switch to safer chemicals, making sure hazardous industries have the best equipment and processes in place, and identifying what each household can do to fortify themselves among other issues. We must also put into office people who have been trained by the community, who have a connection to the community, who understand the expectations community has for them, and who will be held accountable by the community. Yes. We need these sort of decision makers who have intimate knowledge of not just what is on the books, but what is actually happening in communities and how these happenings will affect our adaptation to climate change. Any deal we push forward must include a holistic plan that remedies legacy pollution, while addressing mandatory emission reductions. It cannot solely be a market-based fix while leaving people in West Louisville and others behind.
Thank you.
The plan must deal with the past, the present, and the future. As my friend Michelle Roberts always says, environmental justice is climate justice, and climate justice is environmental justice. Advocating for those impacted the most, those experiencing the largest impacts, is how we save this planet. In all we do, we must look through the lens of environmental justice. We must look through the lens of those immediately impacted. This is where we find solutions, and this is how we save this planet. So before we leave, though, I do want to say that there is a smartphone app that I would love for you all to download. It's called Smell My City. And what it does is it allows community members to document odors that they smell in the air. So in West Louisville and South Louisville, and actually Butchertown and other areas as well, there are often odors that come from neighboring companies or industries, and some of those odors represent highly toxic chemicals that are in our air. So the app actually gives community members a chance to immediately report those. And so we would love for everybody to download it. Again, it's called Smell My City. It's on Android and iOS. And justice for all. EJ, environmental justice for all, y'all.
Hey everybody, welcome to our Union Hall. We're happy to have you all here with us today. My name is Ronnie Holcomb, and I'm a maintenance worker for the Louisville Metro Housing Authority. And I've been a proud union member for 5 years now. My union represents many hard-working people, from brewers to janitors, rail workers, and maintenance men like myself. We are part of the national movement for a just transition because we stand with working class people. That means standing up for what's good for the communities where we all live and work. Right now, one of our biggest climate initiatives is for us to get a coast-to-coast high-speed rail system. As working class people, it's important for us to have access to reliable and affordable transportation. Having an energy-efficient, fast, reliable transit option will be a game changer for the whole city. Not only would it mean jobs for construction and maintenance workers, but also would open up parts of the city and the state that are normally inaccessible to people with no reliable transit option. It's a crucial time in our history where we are all on the cusp of incredible changes. From renewable clean energies to universal free healthcare and education. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but nothing worth doing ever is. But we are close. It's important that we do not give up now. It's important that we don't let up the pressure. It's important that we don't stop caring about the future that we are trying to make, not only for ourselves, but for our children. So to the politicians, we need to say, not just to stay the course, but make sure we keep advancing. Now is not the time to get complacent, to relax and think that we have this in the bag. Now is the time to dig in and work harder than we ever have before, to make sure the future we are striving for does not slip away. If we want to achieve the tomorrow we're fighting for, we need to start working hard today. And to keep that going, meet with us next Thursday for the Yarmouth rally in front of the courthouse. Thank you.
Give it up for Ronnie. Thank you so much. You're my new friend. So again, that rally is next Thursday at 1 o'clock downtown. And Ronnie brought up a really good, important issue in our state is the need for transportation options for folks. And we are in this moment, this infrastructure bill, this budget reconciliation bill is going to be transformational. We haven't had this kind of investment since the New Deal. And we're demanding that this time we get a Green New Deal and that it's equitably shared across our sectors, across our communities, and really speaks to the things that we want to see happen. So let's just give it up for a bold vision. So our final speaker has a big job to do. She's going to update us on all the craziness that's going on in Congress. Representative Ebony Cochran, I don't even know your district number, but I do know that that Churchill Downs is in her district, and she's been holding the line and helping to keep them accountable and make the kinds of investments and support folks, their neighbors like me. I'm one of Churchill Downs neighbors, so I appreciate Representative Cochran pushing there and all the things that she does in Frankfurt and here locally to make sure that our voices are heard and that our visions are planted in legislation that gets passed. So, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I will say that she had a very late invitation. We were really hoping that one of our young leaders were able to join with us today. And I'm so happy that she took the invitation for the next.
Thank you, Casa. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's so great to see you, be among allies and advocates and activists today. I hope everyone's going to enjoy the barbecue. I have yet to sample it, but I've heard it's amazing. And I'm really, really excited to be here, especially at this particular moment, to talk about this once-in-a-generation investment that we're facing right now in Congress. It's a moment like no other that we have seen in our lifetimes and probably will not again. After 3 decades of inaction, Congress is on the edge of passing 3 huge bills related to climate care, which includes education, health care, child care, elder care, jobs, justice, and democracy. So what's happening in Congress right now can be a little bit difficult to follow, so we'll break it down. I've got my notes here so I don't get any of these numbers wrong. But they're working right now to pass a package, right? So these are big bills with a lot of different provisions and a lot of different types of dollars being allocated in several different areas. So infrastructure could mean anything from broadband to trains to bridges, but it could be also investment in our schools and our education and in clean water. So it encompasses a whole lot of different issues that we're all supportive of and we all want to see reform go through for here. The choices and the investments that our congressional representatives make in the next few weeks, so this is just right now, they're going to be at home, they're going to be hearing about what's going into the bills, they're going to get a lot of pressure from advocates and from citizens, and it really is going to help define. So you can be a part of this conversation right now in the next few weeks, helping to define where that money goes, and again, it's going to be a generational investment in the overlapping and intersecting crises of this pandemic that we're still not near the end of, climate change, systemic racism, and economic inequality. So we know that Democrats have a razor-thin majority in the House and the Senate. The filibuster rule, which is still in place, means that even that's not enough to pass most legislation, and that results in the gridlock and the complete lack of action that you see in Congress to some of the most pressing issues that we face every single day, ourselves, with our families, and for our kids. There is still a narrow pathway if every single Democrat in the House and the Senate stand together and pass these budget bills with a simple majority. So what are we talking about? 2 weeks ago, the Senate advanced these two gigantic packages, which include first a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill to fund roads, bridges, high-speed rail, airports, ports, broadband, cleanup of mine lands, and safe drinking water. And the second big package is a budget resolution, which is $3.5 trillion, supported by all the Senate Democrats, I might add, and 0 Republicans, that authorizes Congress to allocate those funds for climate solutions and the care economy, which, as I mentioned earlier, includes education, health care, elder care, child care, and anything in terms of taking care of caregivers that involves services being provided to our community. So the House comes back into session next week to debate and vote on those two Senate measures that have already advanced. So you might think that's the end, but that's just the beginning. Once the House and the Senate give themselves the authority to spend this money, so you've got the $3.5 trillion on climate and care, and then you've got the $1 trillion bipartisan bill, they will then start actually writing the language of the bill itself. So the language has not yet been written. They're just looking at what actually goes in and fighting over what provisions are going to stay in these big budget packages. Later this fall, so we're near the end of August, we've got the House convening again, and later this fall, the House and the Senate are actually going to vote on the reconciliation bill. That's why we're here. We are here to keep organizing and pushing, because this fight and this conversation is not yet over. We still have a chance to let our congressional representatives know exactly what we need, and the fact that we need it yesterday. At every twist and turn in this legislative process, which is already slow, there are powerful and very, very rich interests that are working to take out the things that we just talked about, that our communities need the most. It's why we're calling on Congressman Yarmouth today to do everything that he can to seal the deal, to reject any cuts to climate, any cuts to child care, education, health care, and elder care in the coming weeks. Now, as the House Budget Chair and the sole Democratic representative that Kentucky has in Congress, he's got his work cut out for him, and I'm going to pause to say this. Y'all, Kentucky has got to do better. Yes. We have got to do better. We have got to vote out people who do not care about the people that elected them to serve themselves. These are public servants. They're being paid by taxpayers who are refusing to do their jobs to protect their own people and their own communities. Every policy that we've talked about here, every policy that you see being passed or debated has a root in one single vote. So good, bad, or ugly, every policy that you see being enacted locally and federally comes down to one vote. And if we're not voting the right people in, we can see clear as day what the results are. Their policies, their obstruction at all cost mentality is literally killing us. And the only chance we have is to vote these people out of power. Vote them out of the positions that allow them to be obstructionists and not actually help the people that they need to help. Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, we know these names. Their names are on the ballot every single time, and we re-elect them every single time. Let this time be different. Update your registrations. Make sure your families are registered. Make sure you go door to door as much as you can and register people to vote, because the numbers are with us. This is a small minority of people that are electing these folks. They do not represent Kentucky. They do not represent us. And representation matters. I was about to start cursing, but I'm going to dial it back a minute. They failed, right? They have failed consistently and tragically to do their jobs. They voted against any help that we've gotten in the pandemic. They're a real threat to this opportunity that we're facing right now that, again, comes around once in a generation. So here's a few examples of what we're talking about with the trillions and trillions of dollars that are in this budget reconciliation bill. What does it mean for our workers? What does it mean for our families and our communities? We're talking about historic investments to address the climate crisis, which will put us on track to cut carbon pollution in half and power our communities with 80% clean electricity by the year 2030. Billions of dollars in green, affordable housing, free and clean public transportation, renewable energy and battery storage. Batteries are so crucial. It's such a boring topic. Nobody talks about batteries. Nobody thinks about batteries. But all of the renewable energy that we get is going to need corresponding battery technology and an investment in our power grids to accommodate them. There are billions of dollars allocated for that in this budget. A civilian conservation corps, which is something that existed decades ago to employ hundreds of thousands of young people and address climate change. We're talking about transformational investments in the care economy, including coverage for vision, dental, and hearing for folks on Medicare. I sponsored a bill like this for Kentucky a couple of sessions ago, and I can tell you those gaps matter. You cannot have folks falling through these cracks in terms of health care. We're talking about 2 years of tuition-free education at community colleges, universal free pre-K, and expanded child care subsidies. This itself, the child care issue and expanded child care subsidies, paid family and medical leave, permanent child tax credit, this is something that affects our workers, our workforce, our economy. So anytime you hear somebody talking about economic development, workforce development, talk to them about child care, talk to them about health care, and explain that these things are all interconnected. You cannot address this one issue without talking about all of the issues that every family faces in Kentucky and around this country every single day. The reconciliation bill, and I have a very personal investment in this, will at long last possibly create a pathway to citizenship for millions of people in this country that have been in limbo for decades. That includes dreamers. That includes folks with temporary protected status, farm workers, and other essential workers, which, as was mentioned before, suddenly we see as essential and are not just undocumented, are not just aliens. I'm an immigrant. I'm the first immigrant representative elected in Kentucky, and that matters because representation matters. I need other immigrants to step up and run for office. I need black women. I need young people. I need women of color. We have got to continue these conversations and let Kentucky see that their representatives look like them, talk like them, care about the same things that they care about. I'll end with this. We're not going to get another chance like this. This is, again, a once-in-a-generation investment in our communities, and the crises that we face right now are too serious for Congress to fail us now. It took sustained, relentless, grassroots efforts by young people, black and brown people, labor unions, thank you to our friends in labor for hosting us this evening, community organizations across Georgia, Arizona, and hopefully Kentucky will be the next in that list. And it took all of those folks to get us to just this point where we're having this discussion about the possibility of investing for this in our communities. It's going to take the same work. It's not over. There are still conversations taking place about what goes in the bills. Language is still being drafted. You still have an opportunity this week, next week, and the weeks to come to make sure that we hold Congress accountable, we hold our representatives accountable, and make them do their jobs to protect and serve the constituents that elected them to office. Thank you.
Give it up for Rep. Cochran. She's a great example of a hardworking Kentuckian, of a common sense person who wants to make good things happen. And there are thousands of us across Kentucky, and there are millions of us across the country. And all of us are leaders. All of us have a network. All of us have family. So we can move each other. We can move our neighbors. We can move our family members. We can move our co-workers. And together we can make change. We've got volunteers who have action flyers or some sort of flyers that we can pass out. As we end, I just wanted to share a few things that we can do together to keep this going and to make sure that Congress does what they're supposed to do. So the first thing is we have a representative who's got a very powerful position. Congressman Yarman is the budget chair of the House. And so he's going to be in the room with Pelosi and Schumer and the president when the last thing gets signed. And we want him to be sure that he holds the line. We want him to push. And if Schumer and Pelosi ask for something less, we want him to stand up. And he needs to hear from us. He needs to hear that Kentuckians want him to be bold and big, that Kentuckians are supporting him in his leadership. And we want him to hold the line. So he's got a great staff on his team. They answer calls, they respond to emails. So the first piece of action is to make sure that Congressman Budget Chair Yarmer knows where we stand. So he should get an email from all of us tonight. Or you can just old-fashioned pick up the phone and call the staff. They answer the phone. They're pretty cool too. You can write a letter to the editor. You can pick up the phone and dial into one of the talk radio stations that's talking about what's happening in Congress. We all have a responsibility to make sure that Congressman Yarmouth knows what it's doing. The next thing is that it's not just Congressman Yarmouth. Unfortunately, we have other congressional leaders that also get to vote. And they too should hear from us. The same way in which we're calling and we're encouraging Congressman Yarmouth, we should be demanding from our other congressional leaders that they too should do the same thing. This fall, so the partners that help make this happen today, this fall, are going to be canvassing our community. And there's opportunities for all of us to be engaged, for all of us to get trained up so that we can do our own canvassing in our neighborhoods. We can develop our own teams. And I keep talking about the T-ball and the baseball games. Have y'all been to T-ball and baseball games? Y'all know how many people show up? And they don't have nothing to do. Let's go talk to them. We got folks going out to the football games, the basketball games. We don't have to be in the crowded areas, but we can hang out in the parking lot and talk to people about making sure that we have clean water and clean air, and that my tomatoes are going to be clean when I'm planting in the garden. We can talk to each other, y'all. And thanks to all these partners, they're going to give us some tools and resources to do that. So there's some training opportunities coming up. Please be mindful of those. And then the other thing is that we should just keep taking care of ourselves. I keep hearing a lot about folks pushing other people to go back to work. Some people need to rest. And others of us need to do more work. We are in a transition. That means we're changing. So, like, all the rules are kind of on the table. The gloves are off. And it's our civic responsibility. I know that some other folks talk about individual responsibility in a different kind of way, but we do all have an individual responsibility to make sure that the things that happen in our city council offices, at the school board, at the boardroom of our companies, in the boardrooms of our organizations, in Frankfurt and in DC. We all have a responsibility that the policies and the rules, the decisions that are made really reflect our values. And as Representative Cochran said, there's more of us than there are them. And we're all so tired and broke. Because they got all the money and they're taking all the vacations. And right now, we need the time. We need the time to rest. We need Congress to invest in us because we are the innovators, we are the workers, and we're the ones that are going to power a new economy and a new system for generations to come. I too, I want to live in West Louisville. I want to buy a home in West Louisville. And I'm afraid that I'm committing close to suicide. I'm afraid that my daughter might breathe bad air and she won't be able to have kids. That's a real concern for me. There are people in Eastern Kentucky who have to clean their water, have to get water from some other place, have to boil their water. This is 2021. That should not be happening. And we all have the responsibility and the opportunity to make sure that that changes. So sign up let's get trained up. Let's make sure that our neighbors are registered to vote. And let's continue to push Congress to make the bold transformation changes that we know are going to power our state and our communities into the next generations to come. Thank you so much for coming out and being with us. Please meet somebody new. Please don't go away here without meeting someone new. There's plenty of us. And there's barbecue. I think the barbecue's ready. So thank you so much to the barbecue folks. Thank you to our labor friends at SEIU for hosting us. And we'll talk soon. We'll be canvassing pretty soon together. Thank you.
Y'all were serious about the produce. That's the only requirement now is that
And just so y'all know about the food, there's vegan options as well and dairy-free cheese options if you need that. So just ask, they've got it in the truck.
what am I doing? It's really inspiring. So I'll shoot you a message.
On here and just, show our support.
All right, y'all, that was the Seal the Deal rally here from Louisville. I'm gonna cut it off here. Share out. Follow me, of course, here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Odyssey. Smash all the appropriate buttons. Until next time.